When filling out that TurboTax feels like it's pushing a boulder up a hill, and you're looking over your shoulder because auditors have no chill and they're lying to you on social. You're just looking for something real. Come get down with Brunch and Budget when the IRS is all up in your grill. Welcome to Brunch and Budget, the show about personal finance and racial economic inclusion with your host, Pamela Capalita, a certified financial planner and accredited financial counselor, here to take the bite out of your budget. Brunch and Budget is part of the Race and Wealth Network. Now, I'm your sound provider, Dialect, and here's your host, Pamela Capalita.
Thank you, Dialect. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in today. Our annual, unavoidable tax talk.
I like your theme. We should have let you do it. Unavoidable tax talk. Tax talk. Tax talk. Tax talk. La, 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 la.
Yes.
Rest in power, Adam West. Let's
talk about taxes.
Let's talk about taxes. And
luckily,
why do we have to do this? Because we had a tax talk last time. I know, because we also like to do yearly stuff about boycotts and boycotts and all these kind of things. True. And that's good stuff we change. But taxes, they have the whole thing. It's like death and taxes, right? That's our unavoidable.
They're inevitable, right? They're unavoidable.
But
the details change every year.
Why do the details change?
Especially now, COVID, everybody. So many things are different.
Oh, right. Because tons of people, freelancers, have been taking unemployment.
Unemployment, PPP loans, stimulus checks.
What of that stuff is taxed and what is? I know answers to some of that, but I don't know the answers to all of it.
It's true.
That's why we have experts, and we're going to bring on one of our favorite people.
Yes, we're going to bring on Darren Liddell, who is also a Brunch and Budget Sea Change coach.
Yes. Also, for y'all who don't really know the game like that, he is a superstar in the financial world. One of the last times that we actually got to be around people. Remember, we were at FPP's annual conference and Florida Prosperity Partnership. They do a really great stuff. We did the film festival with them, and we're doing a music festival, which we haven't really shouted out on the podcast, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we were at the thing, and we just mentioned Darren Liddell on the mic, and the whole place
everyone went,
erupted.
Whoop, Darren! So we're
amazing.
Super excited to have him on. We're super excited we get to work with him on the regular. Let's bring him on. I'm going to share his bio so you can blush a little bit. Darren is a seasoned financial coach with over 10 years of experience in financial empowerment. Hi, Darren. You'll find him working to help clients achieve their financial goals, partnering with nonprofit and government organizations to reach those in need, and educating clients about COVID policy changes that impact their finances. Thank you. He is passionate about racial wealth equity, tax policy and prep, and using technology to achieve financial goals. Thank you, Darren, for joining us.
I'm glad to be here, y'all.
Oh my gosh, we're so excited. So like we said, we've been working with Darren. Darren is one of our Sea Change coaches for our group financial planning program for people of color. And he's also a tax preparer. He's been a VITA tax preparer for how long?
Over 10 years now. As crazy as that is.
Wow. Darren. Wait, what does VITA stand for? I always forget.
Just about to say, yeah.
Yeah, so VITA is Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. And it's a national program that happens all over the country to help folks do their taxes for free and actually for free, not with a catch for free like many other programs do.
Yeah, and with that, how does one know whether or not they qualify for getting help from VITA?
Yeah, so good question. So most VITA sites typically have an income limit of around $58,000. There's a little bit of flex in there. So if you made $60,000 or something like that, but you lost your job and you're not working now, most VITA sites will take you on. And they've got a few other ways to help folks that make a little bit more than that, but generally it's about $58,000 for free. And then that might change. I've talked to sites in the Bay Area, they're like, we do way more than that because folks just make so much more here. So no, there's a little bit of flexibility, but for the most part, that's about the general rule.
Cool. And then if you wanted to go to them, but you didn't qualify for free tax preparation, can you pay them to do taxes too?
So no. So VITA is a pretty strong partnership with the IRS, and IRS is pretty intense around there's no tipping, there's no paying for a higher level of service. It's legitimately free. And then if the VITA site can't help you, essentially they do an intake process to tell you, sorry, you don't qualify, but here's a place you can go in the community, probably a local preparer or someone kind of reputable locally.
That's cool, though. I love that. I feel like that resource is just untapped and underutilized in a lot of places. So
I just want to shout that out real quick.
Yes. So thank you for doing the tax talk with us. Thank you for being a tax preparer so we don't have to be tax preparers. I appreciate that so much.
Well, and we see that not just as people who are talking about money, but just like as lifetime freelancers, because many of us have been we've been preparing our taxes because we've mostly been tearing ourselves apart doing them.
It's true. So, we use the word accountant a lot. We've been using the word tax preparer with you. I guess my first question is, what are the first things that someone should think about when they're looking for an accountant or a tax preparer? And I guess really my first question is, what's the difference between an accountant and a tax preparer?
Yeah.
Accountant, Darren.
So I don't think that I am an accountant, but I will say that I am a tax preparer. In my mind, accountants are folks that either they may be CPA, so which is a certified public accountant, but they may not be. They're folks that specialize in accountants can either focus on the tax side or kind of the audit side. And most corporate accountants are folks have a master's in accountancy. Typically are versed in all of it, but have a professional specialty. So while I am not an accountant, I will say that I'm an experienced tax preparer. Fun little note. I actually brought this on to show you guys in case it came up. This is my 10-year tax preparation pin of VITA. It's one of my little proudest little achievements. And since we were in COVID times, we don't get to wear blazers where we can put stuff on our shoulders. Thought I'd show it off on the podcast. But so all that to say, a tax preparer is someone who's going to focus on doing the best job they can on your taxes, preparing a detailed, thoughtful tax return. They're going to ask you all the questions. They're really there to make sure you get everything you're entitled to and make sure you're doing everything right. And I would say that I'm squarely in that box.
Got you. Okay, cool. So basically, if you're just looking for someone to prepare your taxes, you don't really need a CPA. You don't need a bookkeeper. You just need a tax preparer
don't even need necessarily an accountant. I'm trying to see the different gradations of, because there's a tax preparer, there's an accountant, and there's an accountant who is a CPA.
Yeah.
And you may not need any of those other things. It's scary though, because we're told we need an accountant and we want them to have a designation, because the designation proves to us that they're legit and they know their stuff. So how do we find out if they're not a CPA or if they're not an accountant? How do we know whether or not they're legit?
Yeah. So I tend to ask I encourage my clients to ask a few questions. The first thing is, can I contact you beyond this tax season with this information that you provided me with? I've got a lot of clients who will say, they come to me and say, did my taxes on the street at this preparer? After tax season, they were gone. I had no way to contact them. They wrote that the taxes were self-prepared on the return. And basically, I don't know what to do now. Can you please help me? So the first thing is, can someone kind of vouch for them? Do you know someone who worked with them in the past? Was it in a different tax year? And if so, that's already a strong foundation and something good. And then I think from there, in the same way you would ask is someone, a fiduciary who's going to do what's in your best interest, but also within the confines of the law, kind of ask the preparer, I want to get the best refund possible, but I don't want to be doing anything shady. Are you going to be upfront about that? I want to understand my taxes first and foremost before anything else. And I know when I do taxes for folks, I make it my job to, in the last 10 minutes of the session, we're going to go through the return together. I'm going to explain it to them. They're going to walk away with an understanding of both how the tax return works and the choices that I made that was informed by them and the information that they gave me. So that way they feel comfortable signing and saying this is right. Because in the end, the preparer prepares the taxes. And even though it'll say the preparer's name at the bottom and where you prepared it, the client is always actually responsible for the tax return in the end. And that's why you signed to say, I believe that this is all true. And I'm basically attesting to the truthfulness of it.
Okay. So if a tax preparer runs their business like a Halloween costume store, then you shouldn't trust them.
Exactly.
Okay. No, that's good. That's a good baseline.
You're right.
That's
they're a tax preparer from January through April, and then they're a notary in driving school the rest of the year. It's let's not do that.
Christmas wrapper.
Yeah.
Egg painter. They're just easily whatever you need. What's people's need at the time? I got stuff.
They also sell Halloween costumes.
Right. Yeah, they are. It's the same cat.
So those are a no. I love that. I guess if we did,
I never thought about that though, because I would think it's okay to go to a seasonal person.
Right, because it's that's that makes sense. It's tax season's over, but if you think about it, especially because we have advised a lot of clients in the past to like file for an extension if they feel like they're running out of time, right? To wait to file their taxes. And then you have until September or October to do it. What if your tax preparer disappears after they file your extension, right?
Yeah, they're like, it's okay to have someone who, like, you know, a lot of preparers will focus and do most of their work in the heart of tax season and then like slow down a little bit, but there's a difference between slowing down and just disappearing. If that makes sense.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel that. Well, I guess, and then to go back to the original question that I asked, how do you know when you need an accountant or a tax preparer?
Yeah.
So good question. So most folks, I'd say like a large majority of folks have relatively simple taxes, right? They maybe work a job, a W-2 job. They get, you know, one W-2, a few W-2s per year. They're not individually itemizing things. They don't have small business expenses. Those are the kind of folks that I feel like can possibly, like, won't need an accountant or maybe even a tax preparer. They maybe can do taxes on their own. They can use a free software. You know, in some cases, you can take a picture of your W-2, it's uploaded, and the return's mostly prepared for that. So essentially, like, there's this kind of like simpler tax bucket. And then I think there's like, for freelancers and folks that have small business information, or maybe they own a home, or maybe they had like large medical expenses this year, things get a bit more complicated, and maybe they're considering itemizing, or they donated a lot of money to charity. As things get more complex, or if you're doing your taxes with the software and you're like, I'm not actually sure if this is right, or I've been doing this for 2 hours and I have questions about whether I'm doing it correctly, that may be the point where you start to think like, okay, let me talk to a paid preparer about this who can really get my back, inform me what's happening. And then on the like CPA level, I'd say like most folks don't need a CPA until you get past a certain point. Like if you've got a larger business or a business with multiple employees or some employees that, you know, maybe that's the point where you start to begin to think more seriously about working with someone who has a higher designation, because with that higher designation comes a higher cost, but also potentially a deeper knowledge.
Got you. Okay. So it sounds like most people either can do it on their own or they can hire a tax preparer like you. So I have a question.
Although I wanted to highlight, I think that it is useful to remember that even if you're competent at preparing your taxes, wow, we're really throwing the T's in there. Even if you're confident with it, then it still is helpful if you're paranoid about where you're at to talk to somebody to let you know that you know what you're doing. Even
if you just do it for 1 year and you're like, okay, good, I've been doing it all right.
That's
this whole
saying,
time. Yeah. So,
yeah,
okay. How much do you charge, Darren? Can I ask that?
Yeah, no, super good question. So I typically charge, I tend to like have a flexible rate because I'm always trying to be inclusive of folks, but I don't want to turn folks away. But my kind of starting point's around $100, and I basically try to hit $200 per tax return unless there's something unique there. And I try to do that because I want folks to understand, like, a lot of preparers will have this like kind of menu of, if you've got a Schedule C, if you've got a Schedule E, which is for rental income, if you've got all these individual little things, then it kind of adds up into being this like, your whole order is $500. And I feel like that's just hard for folks to understand. So I started at $200, assuming that I'm going to take 2 hours to do someone's return. If it's shorter than that, then I'll like give folks the money back, but I'd be transparent about tracking my time. And kind of telling them what's expected and what's going on. That pays for like the software that I use. It pays for my kind of professional experience, but I'm also not trying to, I'm trying to really come from the background or from the place of educating folks and having them understand. So at the end, there's always going to be that time for us to go through the return together and do what I kind of mentioned before.
I love that. So do you do the tax return with people, or are you like gathering all their documents and then you give the return back to them and say, here's what I did?
So we tend to have, some different folks want different things, right? So some folks want to do the taxes with you and to see what's happening, what you're putting into the software, and if you would explain it to them as you're doing it. So for those folks, we do the whole thing together. We have a pre-session where they kind of give me their documents, talk me through what's going on. I answer any questions before, and then we'll actually get on in a second session and do the taxes right then. That gives them a chance to bring any follow-up documents that maybe we're missing, and for us to just kind of knock it out right then. And then there are other folks who are like, I definitely don't want to see that piece, but I do want to see the tax return at the end. And then for those folks, we tend to go through the return together. And then as we're looking at it, if they identify something or I have a question for them, like, hey, I didn't see this in here, but a lot of folks typically have this business expense, for example, but I didn't see it for you. Then we'll go back and add it in, and I'll pull up the software. They'll see it as I add it in, and then they can see the changes to the tax return that result from that as well.
Wow, that is some of the most transparent and clear pricing I've ever heard. You basically charge $100 an hour.
Yeah, I mean,
right? Yeah.
I've looked at those menus before for taxes, and it looks like your first time when you're looking at a French restaurant's menu, and you're like, "Wait, a
Schedule C.
a liolai? Oh, it's just mayo. Okay." You know,
it's just another form that actually only takes you 10 minutes to do, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Wait, so, okay, are you booked?
So I am very booked, and I've been intentional not to take on too many clients because tax season is already stressful enough as it is. So I have a very limited open window where I take on new clients. So I'll be transparent around that.
Here's a question on that. This is, I guess, it's clearly going to be too late for a lot of heads, but like, when do you start hollering at somebody? Because I know that
that's
nerves
a great question.
Get in there. You start feeling like you need to do it yourself, and I feel like this has happened to me where I've gotten into it, and it's now March 28th, and I'm like, oh, I should probably call somebody, but by that time it's too late
to do it with someone.
So when should is it too early to do it in January to reach out? Like, when do we holler at you?
Yeah, so good question. So most folks start getting booked up, I'd say in January, in some cases December, in some cases it's as early as November. But what I'll say is for most folks, tax season has ebbs and flows. This year's a little weird because of the pandemic and tax season starting late, but the typical flow is January is like kind of the pre-time. Like folks are waiting for tax documents to come in. That's typically a good time to reach out and kind of schedule your appointment with your preparer. It kind of ensures that they're probably not booked up for the whole season. In some cases they may be, but essentially January is like a good place to kind of start. And then like things get busy for your preparer in February. Everybody's got their documents, they're sending them into them. March tends to be like busy, but a little bit of a slowdown because like at least at Vita sites, folks who want to get their returns kind of they want to get their refund have like they packed in February, and March is a little bit of a slowdown. And then there's the folks at the end who want to do their taxes but are going to wait to the deadline, maybe because they owe, maybe because they just are have other things to do. And then April picks up and it's super busy. So like there's like a sweet spot in the middle of March that's like not super duper crazy, and then you're back to like the hecticness of the end of tax season again.
Wow.
Can I ask a potentially dumb kind of question? Can I just reach out in May and lock it down for next year?
I was just
like, especially if you miss it, or you're like,
I'm like, I want to get in Darren's calendar.
Well, and not even just you. I'm just saying because I'm pretty sure what you're saying is like it's typical of a lot of these cats. Like, is that cool or
especially
is that not doable?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. The short answer is in most cases, maybe, wow, a little too soon. But I think in like early fall, most folks will start to put like either think about their calendars or have them available, and we'll kind of send that email to clients of like, all right, guys, we're ramping up again. If you want to go ahead and lock it in, here you go. But I think reaching out earlier is always better, even if it's just to say, I want to get with you as soon as I can, possibly. When's that going to be? At least then you know.
I think that sounds great. I guess on that tip then, so if you reach out in like May or June or whatever, say like, can I get on your mailing list so that I know you're ready to start taking bookings?
Yeah. Or like, you just did my taxes, can you put me on your email list kind of thing?
And tax preparers who don't have email lists because you think no one wants to listen to your newsletter, get an email list so you can tell people when tax season starts. Yeah. It's okay if we just get one a year from you.
Exactly. That's all we need really to like fill up your schedule.
Like maybe two.
Oh,
like, hey, here, my schedule's open. Hey, my schedule's almost full.
Yeah, exactly.
Then it's just those
my schedule
two.
Almost full.
Yeah.
All right, we should go to a song so people can go book their tax appointments right now.
Yes.
Before it's too late.
Take a minute. This is the soundtrack to you booking your tax appointments. And this one was actually a little bit difficult to me. This is like a little bit of privilege as a underground hip hopper person. I always say that I want to play the indiest stuff.
Yeah.
And while I was finding this, there was a collaboration between someone who's super indie, another one who's also super indie, but like has a little bit of knownness. And I found myself asking, I don't know, does our audience know Illmaculate too much? No, right? Underground artist. So, I'm pulling through. It's a great song. This is called Stay Income Tax by Only One, featuring Illmatic, produced by Chase Moore. And we'll check y'all in a minute.
Hey, girl.
They go around. All right.
King changed you. You killed in his name and he blamed you. One day they love you and the next day hang you. Omnipotent eye, it lives in the sky. 100 bullets, take 100 innocent lives. Sift through the propaganda because history lies. You speak up about the truth and you mysteriously die. Just cause I believe it, that doesn't make it a ruse. Just cause I can't prove it, it doesn't mean it isn't true. 1,000,000 miles away, so who are they a threat against? Ask the demolition man, who's the one that benefits? The king had person's frame, murdered in his name, the kingdom burns in flames. That's an insurance claim. We've had 100 kings funded by bloody gold. Anything the crown gives, it takes back 100-fold. Kill 1,000 natives, spike a railroad. We paid with our lives to pay this road. The rich paid and gone. We're 100 lives, we're 100 different masters. Everything you have is enough to take a taste. 100 lives, we're 100 different masters. Everything you have is enough to take a taste. 100 faces, gone through 1,000 changes, 10,000 transformations. Someone's very rich, as long as your money less. I got my hands bloody, you don't need be 100 less. A world hungerless, where everyone is fed, just a foolish dream. 2,000 years of men still ruled by kings. 1,000,000,000 puppets to the masters as they pull the strings. Colonize, conquest, conquer human beings. Two machines start to drown, someone takes me by the hand. When I woke, there wasn't any footprints inside the sand. There will never be a day where the wound in my heart can mend. The devil that we fight is the devil in the hearts of men. We've had 100 kings funded by bloody gold. Anything the crown gives, it takes back 100-fold. Kill 1,000 natives, spike a railroad. We paid with our lives to pay this road. The rich paid and gone. We're 100 lives, we're 100 different masters. Everything you have is enough to take a taste. 100 lives, we're 100 different masters. Everything you have is enough to take a taste. Build a fortune, kill a poor, call it misfortune. Use our blood and bone as brick and mortar. Build a throne and we kneel before it. Ignorance isn't bliss anymore, it's blistering torture. So death is all I wish, and when they misinform us, no forgiveness for 'em. Gave my heart, empty storage, get extorted. Die and live according to the system's orders. I lived 100 lives, been hung for treason. They close their ears in fear, my words will crumble kingdoms underneath them. Law born in the dark ages, the worldly ways of the fathers live in their bodies like deserted caves, echoing voices whose meanings they don't comprehend. They don't understand the law of God, so they follow men. We're 100 lives, we're 100 different masters. Everything you have is enough to take a taste. 100 lives, we're 100 different masters. Everything you have is enough to take a taste.
Yo, that was Stay. Income Tax. That was Only One from Portland, Oregon, featuring Illmatic, also known as Illmac. Yeah, I see. Illmaculate is from the battle rap scene. I know him from like way back in Scribble Jam, where that's like a great hip hop thing that we miss, wish would come back. But like, it's great seeing these battle rappers being like, I want to battle these things that actually piss me off rather than other artists.
I love it. I love it.
There was a quote I wanted to say about anything the crown gives, it takes back 100-fold. Taxes are a weirdly emotional thing because there's this idea that like we're stealing from each other. There's like, I know a lot of young people. I remember when I was young, I went through the semi-libertarian phase of the idea of like taxing is theft.
Right.
So people be like, oh, and taxes are also given to the military or it's given to the liberals.
Like things I don't believe
it's given to something you don't believe in one way or next, right? So you're like, how am I even a part of this? How do I benefit? And you just like, it makes it really easy, especially when you're not making a lot of money, to just be like, I'm just going to recede from this whole thing and put ourselves in a horrible position. We have like good questions about this stuff, but I want to ask you like just real quick, like for those folks who get themselves in that situation and then realize that you do need to be part of the system to get to where you want to be, how do you unravel that with somebody, like both like financially and emotionally, because you feel stupid?
Yeah, this is a good question, and I have like a little story to go along with an example client of mine from a few years back. So I was working at this nonprofit in Miami, and there's a, I guess semi-famous in circles, like employee who basically served in the military. While he was in the military was like, I'm not about this. I'm out. And basically it led to a bunch of actions. But once he got back to the States and kind of like had his case and all that, he was like, okay, I'm not paying taxes. That's my way to fight back and kind of like, fight back against the man. And essentially about 3 years into working at this nonprofit together, he walked up to me and knocked on the door and was like, hey, Darren, I haven't, so heads up, I just got this letter from IRS and the HR just gave me this letter to go along with it. Says my wages are about to be garnished. How can, what's going on? How can we stop this? And I said, okay, let's take a look at this. Basically, he hadn't filed taxes in a few years, but had been withholding, had chose to have his withholding super high so that he would get as much money as possible. IRS kind of caught on to it, said, we want you to pay us taxes now. So he had to file his taxes. We had to call IRS, figure out what's going on. And in the end, have a kind of conversation around like, okay, so, like taxes do help a lot of folks, right? Like you contributing to your taxes ends up helping a lot of the folks in the low income communities that we're working with. But at the same time, like it's understandable that, you would make this choice. Kind of what's the middle ground and kind of how can, like, are you okay with this? And like, let's just have a kind of informed conversation around it. And in the end, he both decided to do his taxes with me and like understood that like, although he'd had this kind of beef with the government, that it was kind of, that he would ultimately be doing good by folks that we're serving and folks that we'll never see by paying into the tax system. So, that's one way to think about it.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, that is really helpful. And I think too, I understand where like all of it is coming from. And I feel like at the end of the day, this stuff does catch up to you and then you feel even more stuck and you feel even less like you can do anything about it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the real things is, and we talk about this a lot about personal finance being the thing that allows you to make revolutionary acts.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're in a situation where your wages are getting garnished or you're getting taken away,
or you keep getting letters, there's like threats to like come audit your stuff.
Well, I'm saying you get like actually locked up and stuff. It's like, there's
like you go to jail.
I mean, when we think about taxes and their power, like those are the things that took down Al Capone. They couldn't get Al Capone on nothing else, but the IRS is like, oh nah.
He hasn't paid his taxes.
We're going to get you on your taxes.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where if you do want to make significant change, including in terms of these things of the taxes, you have to be able to be in the game. That's one of the things that sucks about capitalism. It's pretty ingenious that you have to be in the game and doing well in the game to have any kind of voice when they call it free speech.
All right.
Powerful.
Anyway,
taxes is necessary.
So let's bring it a step back and let's talk about these taxes that we're preparing.
Yeah. So I actually want to start with the big tax changes that happened from COVID, from the last year. What's changed in 2020 as we prepare our 2020 tax returns that we should anticipate that we should look out for?
Yeah. So super great questions. And I think this is kind of the hot topic, both at tax preparation sites and for preparers doing taxes virtually is, what's changed and what should I know? So the first place I want to start with is the question most folks ask about is, I got these stimulus checks or the stimulus money. Is it taxable? Like, what's my responsibility with it? What should I be doing? Or if I didn't get it, what can I do? And the short answer is, if you haven't received your stimulus money yet, I would really encourage you to file your taxes because that's the only way to get any stimulus check or portion of a stimulus check that you didn't receive from the IRS in one of either of their direct payments. So to take a step back for folks that don't know, there were stimulus checks, one in late spring, early summer, and then one recently in January. Typically, if you're a single person, it was $1,200 in the fall or in the spring, and then $600 in the fall, with a little bit added for dependents as well. You get 500 or 600 added for dependents. They did some retroactive things to change the law. So like if you are married to someone who has an ITIN number or, is undocumented, basically. You weren't allowed to get stimulus checks with the first round, but you could have got them in the second round, but you may not have got either of them. All of that to say, for anybody who didn't get it for whatever reason, either check, you can do your taxes now and get them. There's something called the recovery rebate credit that allows you to get those stimulus checks now.
Cool. So you didn't lose out; you just had to wait.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's been interesting too, because some folks maybe didn't get it in 1 year because they were a dependent, but in 2020 they actually weren't a dependent. Now they're getting the stimulus, and I feel like those are some of my most excited folks who were students in 2019, but in 2020 they were on their own and didn't get the stimulus, but now are like, oh yeah,
Here's the money. And the other thing too is like a lot of people lost their jobs or their income dropped in 2020, and they technically didn't qualify based on their 2019 income. But now in 2020, you actually do qualify for the check. So this is also the only way to get it is to file your taxes, right?
Exactly.
Nice. And so are stimulus checks taxable?
So stimulus checks are not taxable. There was like a little bit of time where folks were like, is this going to be taxable? We don't know. Short answer is no, not taxable.
Yay. Okay, good. Because they're tax credits, right? They're not income.
Exactly.
Oh, my goodness. My goodness. Okay. So what about things like unemployment? Because I feel like an unprecedented amount of people not only were eligible for unemployment because they opened it up to freelancers, but they filed unemployment for the first time ever.
Yeah. So unemployment is something that is taxable. And maybe that'll change in the future. There's talks kind of in Congress so that maybe the next bill will have the unemployment will not be taxable. But for now and in the past, it almost always is taxable for everybody. So what that means is if you earned, let's say, a $20K over all of 2020 in unemployment checks, IRS is going to want you to pay tax on that $20,000 that you made and any other W-2 income that's normally taxable. So you have the option to take taxes out from your unemployment. And I think a lot of folks don't know that this option exists, but you can basically tell them, yes, take out federal taxes and take out state taxes. What that means in your day-to-day is you'll get a smaller check every time your unemployment comes. But at the end of the year, when it's time to do your taxes, it'll likely make the burden of doing taxes less burdensome because you will have paid those taxes in advance and are now, kind of like almost benefiting from paying them a little bit early.
Yeah, that makes sense. It just doesn't make any sense. I'm like, wait, this is not actually earned income, but I have to pay taxes on it. Okay.
Yeah, well,
it's like the government gave me the money and they're going to take some of it back.
Yeah, because I didn't have enough money. You're giving me money. This should be a credit also.
Yeah.
But it's a designation thing, right? And I think that's the thing with the IRS is like it doesn't even matter if like about need.
They're counting as income.
Well, because
income is income.
It came in and it's income because that's where it slots, right? I know that the IRS is known for being very dry and rigid, and I think that's one of the examples, right?
Yeah,
there.
like that's where it
I was just trying to look up. I saw when they were debating and talking about the new stimulus, they were saying something about trying to give a credit for unemployment. It was like some like Band-Aid thing on top of it where you would still have to pay. You would still have to pay taxes on it, but if you got unemployment, you would end up getting money back through some other. Because again, they rigidly do their system, but I don't think that he ended up getting.
Because I did see that the Senate passed a bill where unemployment, the first $10,200 of unemployment that you collect is not going to be taxable. So that was part of the bill that the Senate passed. So I don't know if that means in 2021. I don't know if that means like going back to 2020. Everything is vague.
Does that happen now?
Everything's always vague with these stimulus packages until we actually see I'm not even counting on these stimulus checks until we see them in our hands.
No, but on the real, like in case that you're concerned about that kind of thing, we're not even sure if that's going to be enforceable right now because it may be too late in the game to put that in. So,
right. Well, you probably get your money. Don't expect anything.
Don't expect that this year.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a precedent for sometimes things happening in mid-tax season, like changes that are retroactive. And as a tax preparer, it's a little like, oh man, this is terrible, because it means you got to do amendments for people that did their taxes early and like they didn't it makes things a bit more complicated. So it could happen, but yeah, I think Pam's logic is perfectly right. Let's kind of stand by and see. Let's wait till it's official and then we'll know.
There's too much speculation. So speaking of confusing things, a lot of freelancers got PPP loans last year. They're applying for them now. There's been a lot of back and forth with Congress in terms of like, is this money taxable? Is it deductible? Blah, 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 all this stuff. So what's the final verdict on PPP loans if you got a PPP loan?
So PPP loans, like there were some back and forth, but the final verdict is not taxable, most likely, with a possible. It's like even the final verdict is a little bit messy. So typically on federal taxes, it shouldn't be taxable, period. But the kind of thing that's happening with all these tax changes is federal policy changes, it's implemented, but then state taxes aren't always changed as quickly or aren't changed at all. So in some cases, in some states, your PPP loan may be taxable to your state. But like that's so specific to the state that I'd say like just make sure you ask for your preparer in your state. Is it taxable? And they'll be able to help you out.
Is it taxable in New York? Do they fix this or no?
I think New York is good.
Okay. Oh my God.
Yeah, I actually haven't. Yeah, as far as I know, it's good. If that changes, I'll let y'all know. But
I never know what New York is ahead of or behind on. So I'm like, did they fix this or no? I don't know.
Yeah, fair.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So what else do we need to know with this crazy year of COVID with taxes?
Yeah, so a few other things to kind of keep in mind is, so we talked about unemployment income being a taxable income, but it also is unearned income. So for like some clients who I work with, they qualify for something called the earned income credit. And then most folks who have kids get the child tax credit. And basically what kind of Congress approved in the late December, early January kind of changes is you can now look back into your 2019 taxes and use your 2019 AGI or modified AGI to determine if you qualify for the earned income credit or the child tax credit. You can use whichever is better for 2020 or 2019. So for regular folks, what you should do is just make sure that when you're doing your taxes, if you're going to a new preparer this year, tell them like, hey, here's my tax return. They'll look at that, see your AGI, see if you qualify and which one is better, unless you know. And if it's someone you've done taxes with before, they'll have the information already. Just make sure you point it out to them that, hey, what's the deal with this EITC look back? And do I qualify for that? And does it affect my child tax credit and the amount that I get per child that I have on my taxes? And they'll kind of talk you through it.
Yeah. Okay. Woof. Wow. Yeah. I didn't even think about it. So unemployment is income, but it's unearned income. So you don't qualify for the earned income credit.
Right.
Exactly.
High and rigid.
Mm-hmm.
It's tricky, y'all. It's tricky. Another thing I'll say too is a lot of folks are thinking like, will IRS push back the tax deadline? Last year it was April 15th until it wasn't, and then the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden it was July. Right now the deadline is still April 15th. So plan for April 15th. It may change. Things can always change. We're in kind of an unprecedented year, but the suspicion is that it will probably stay the same and stay April 15th this year.
Right.
Short answer. Yeah.
Well, so if the deadline is April 15th, everyone's tax calendars are full. You can't get an accountant. So what's the deal with filing an extension?
So great question. You basically can file an extension, and what the extension allows you to do is it basically tells IRS, I'm probably going to be late with filing my taxes. You have the option with the extension to pay the money that you think you're going to owe. And you may say like, well, I don't know how much I'm going to owe. I haven't done my taxes yet. That's literally why I'm getting the extension.
Right.
But in IRS's eyes and in most states' eyes, what they say is the deadline is still the 15th. So regardless of whether you file an extension or not, you're supposed to pay your money by then. So you're basically supposed to make an estimated guess and pay it with the extension. You can, of course, choose to pay nothing, but then they then charge you penalties and potentially interest on that money if you do end up paying them. And a lot of folks don't know this as well, but if you actually get a refund and IRS owes you money, but you filed an extension is kind of short, but if you wait a year or two to do your taxes, they actually are responsible for paying you interest on that refund money that they're supposed to pay you back as well. So it's not like it's meant to be fair to both sides. So if you're paying interest because you owe, fine. If they're paying interest to you because you're supposed to get a refund earlier but didn't, you also can be eligible to get that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that too, because I got messed up a number of times with that, because I remember I was taking a lot of spring trips for work and I was like, I can't deal with this right now. I'm going out of the country to do this. And let me just file the extension because I know you can. And no one ever told me that I had to pay. And I'd be like, why am I paying so much every time whenever I file these extensions?
They shouldn't call it an extension.
Yeah, they really need another name for it.
Not if nothing's extended.
Yeah, not if the money part isn't extended. The filing they were cool with. They were just like, but you give us a bunch of money.
File it later, yeah, but give us a bunch of money now. Take a guess.
Yeah. I'll tell folks too, a lot of folks don't know that the penalty for filing, so the penalty for not filing is typically so much more than the penalty for filing but then not paying. So it's always better to like essentially file your taxes, even if you go back and change it later. File something. And then if you can't pay it, just don't send it. But you basically save, in some cases, it's like 100, it's like 5% versus 0.5% kind of thing. So just know that there's a big saving in doing your taxes, even if you can't pay it right then.
They don't want you to not file.
Is there a big, easy way to guess? If you have like, I need to extend and I've never extended before and I actually don't know how much I should be paying. What should I do? Is there an easy way to figure out a guess for like a vague number?
What I'd recommend is, so there's a bunch of, there's some really thoughtful tax calculators online. I just would Google tax calculator, pull up one. One that I've used in the past for folks that are small business owners is the folks at EITC Outreach or the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities have something called like a rideshare tax calculator. If you Google rideshare tax calculator, it'll come up as the first thing. It basically lets you put in your income from your freelance income and from your W-2 income, and it estimates how much taxes you'll have to pay over the course of the year, and then it will tell you for each quarter you should be paying this much in advance. So like worst case, it's April 14th, you haven't done anything, I'd say hit up that calculator, type in, enter all your income information. There's like a 2-minute version and like a 10-minute version. If you use the 2-minute version, do that, get the amounts. You can then either write by paper and fill out the extension form, or go online and fill it out. And typically you can pay the money in advance, either with IRS or with your state. If it's from your bank account, you can pay it with no fees directly to their website. If you're using your credit card or something, then they like charge you a processing fee. It's a little bit, it's a little bit more of a headache, but it's still possible.
Yeah.
So pay if you can, but if you can't pay, at least file, because the penalties will be like 10 or 100 times less, it sounds like.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. It's like 5% to not file versus 5%, 0.5% to not pay.
Yeah. And if you can pay, and even if you don't know how much, put something.
Pay a little bit so you don't end up paying penalties on that.
Yeah.
Pay what you can. Pay what you can.
Pay what you can, because you can end up paying more later.
Exactly.
That's what we mean by unavoidable.
Oh my goodness. Oh, extensions. Okay, so let's talk about freelancer stuff, because I feel like everyone has freelancer income nowadays. So the thing that I'm wondering is, how much freelancing do you need to be doing for it to be worth it to hire an accountant?
Good question. The short answer is, wow, that's a really thoughtful question I've never been asked before. I think it can be like if you earn a few $1,000s every year, but you've got lots of expenses. So let's say you're starting freelancing. The example of a hot topic right now is like you're launching a YouTube channel. And to launch that YouTube channel, you invested heavily and bought a bunch of equipment. And because it's your first year, you didn't get a lot of views, so you don't have that income yet. But you did like invest in a computer, you invested in editing software, you invested in a green screen, you made all these big investments. So like essentially, if you spend a bunch of money, then I think it's worthwhile, because you may not know which things qualify as expenses and which things don't. To talk with the preparer and kind of like explore that. And a lot of folks are kind of like, what if I had more losses than income? Like, then should I be talking to a preparer? Probably, because it can get a little complicated. And if you had a lot of losses, you can only claim so much losses per year, typically around $2,000 in losses. And then everything else kind of carries forward to future years if you just have losses and no income. Versus if you have income and losses, they kind of offset each other. So if you have $50,000 in income and $50,000 in expenses, which is a lot of expenses, but it can happen, you then would like break even and have zero. But if you have $50,000 of expenses but $5,000 of income, you now have $45,000 of losses, and you can't use all those losses in 1 year. So it just becomes a bit more complicated.
But the carry forward, I actually didn't know that. So basically, if you had losses this year, but next year you have profits, then you can still take those losses you have this year and count them against the profits for next year.
Yeah, that's something that corporations abuse. I feel like I've heard about corporations abusing that one.
Just like carrying forward losses, right? Tax loss carry forward. Woo.
That's also something that I know as a creative freelancer, artists are often told, like, it's okay if you do that. That's like the way, because, next year you're going to blow up. So just, keep doing that and like lean us into that when that's not great.
Is there like a limit to that? Like, is there a certain number of years where the IRS is like, all right, is this a real business? Because you've been losing money for like 10 years.
The short answer is, at least in my experience, no, there's no limit to that. Wow.
I
think there is a question of like, should you still continue with the business if you just keep losing money, like over and over again? But
Amazon does, so
Yeah, real.
Are they really a business?
Are they really a business? Is Uber really a business, Darren?
I mean, probably not.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. Okay. So really, like, if you're a freelancer and you have a lot of expenses, and also if you don't know what expenses are business expenses that can be deductions, like, don't try and do it yourself, right? Don't spend a whole day trying to like go through your bank statements and like guess at what you can actually deduct. Like, talk to a professional, because they're actually going to save you money in the end, ultimately.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly. Short answer is, in the worst case, you do it in this 1 year, you learn a lot from them, and then you try to do it the next year on your own. I think a lot of folks are like, kind of think I have to work with someone, now I got to work with them forever. And typically, like, if the goal is education, you learn what you need, and now you feel more comfortable and can do it on your own. That's great.
Although I think that once someone does it with someone versus doing it on their own, it's like, oh, I just should never do this on my own.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like going to the laundromat when you realize there's like the wash dry full service, and you're like, oh wait, they'll get my back, and it's not that much more.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good analogy. I love it.
I feel like we need to go to a song, but like I think
right.
I've been noodling in my head. I don't know if you've seen the blank expression while y'all were talking about that, but like, is a yenta a business or like a auntie? Because like that's what Uber is really, right? Uber is like a yenta. It's like, I know some people over here who need a ride, and then some people over here who got a ride, and we just match the ones who who fit together.
That's great.
Oh,
so that's
ride sharing is really just matchmaking.
Right, yeah, ride sharing is just matchmaking. But I want to pull up this song. We're going all the way from Portland, Oregon, coming down to Houston, Texas. I'm excited about this because it's a very Houston kind of song. From Big Sub. Cat Out Here's got this one where I love this song that they're talking about what they're going to do when their income tax returns come in. They're going to have an income tax party. So check this out, and we'll be back with you in a moment.
New Day Entertainment, baby. Listen, we all so clean and we all so fresh. It's all good right now, we all feeling blessed. Dress in the house, yeah, people, married folks on your sheet, on your spine. It's a whole time of year, yeah. We spread enjoy and we give it shit, yeah. I got a knot in my pocket, wearing a couple of grand. I got some keys, yeah, cash in hand. Got some keys, got some cubes in my ear. I jacket, even got some new underwear. I like friends there, across the flow. I see my sisters and brothers on the way through the door. See, they so fresh. Baby, New Day and Big Sub known to drive them crazy. If you owe me, nigga, pay me. I'm at my spot. I'll be waiting for your ass at your mailbox. All invited, yes, really like it. It's a good time of year. Great time. Everything we go through, we don't do it like we're supposed to. It's going down right here. You're all invited, yes, really like it. It's a good time of year. Everything we go through, we don't do it like we're supposed to. It's going down right here. Just got my income tax back, 2.5 stacks. Let me get it in all 20s with rubber band wraps. About to hit them all and ball out on black tees. Hit the hood for my J65 a piece. With my baby and some riders that won't touch the ground. Drop 50 on this tank to say H-Town Wild. Splurging if he to my basket fill. All name brand cereal, no more tomato. This money's lucky charms, still the marshmallow ladies. All the bootlegs that my movie man can make me. Throw a ham and some knock in the hoodoo. Family pack sausage and the I get my check from the IRS. I'm paying off all my bills and I'm getting new shit. I want some new kids and baby baby back. I need new living, dining and bedroom suits. And I need a new car, the one with the All-Star. We can't afford the DVD, so we gon' get the VCR. Money right, no income tax, got us for sure. I can get the biggest bottle, I can get the less slow. I been thinking Joe, fuck the Sam should be saying it. He said fuck a tree, and then give a nigga counting up. It's the real holiday, the real joy time of year, the real time to celebrate. You smelling money in the gun, and I know you work so hard all day on your day. And that's that girl all with the work on the street all day. Say you all invited to this party, and since we all got a chicks, we gon' have all day. Cheers. You invited to time of year. Everything we go through, we don't do it like we're supposed to. It's going down right here. I know y'all heard this. You're all invited, and yes, we're delighted. It's a good time of year. Great time. Everything we go through, we don't do it like we're supposed to. It's going down right here. The two thoughts, tick-tock, I'ma let my beat knock. In the blue drop top, hitting switches on the block. Peanut butter flip-flop on some old school D's. Income tax back, so I'm waiting on the 23. Swoop the scoops up and blow on trees. Reminisce on how it used to be. While sipping Hennessy. Alphabet got me feeling at ease. Cause I know I'm protected by some real OGs. And I'm wishing on a star I can see some real cheese. It's time of year for me to start doing me. A new year brings new things, big things popping. Got a pocket full of money and the party ain't stopping. Got a whole club rocking, New Day, ENT. You know who lays the hook? It's courtesy of 3. Yep. 3. Do it again. All invited. That's when the night is. It's a good time of year. Come on. Everything we go through, we gon' do it like we're supposed to. Right here.
Oh, that's the income tax party. Big Sub and friends. Actually, I don't have the names of the other artists who rocked with Big Sub on that. Really dope joint where they get really honest and real about, like, even see the cover that said income tax in the hood, the poor man's Christmas.
Yeah.
Because like they're like, that's our celebration. And it's so ill because it's a savings and it's a thing that we made for ourselves. Right? That's their money.
Yeah.
That they're like, oh, I'm so happy to be getting this money from the IRS, but that's their money. And it's
like
this amazing okie doke.
Oh my God. I just like had a thought that I always have every time we talk about this. It's an unpopular opinion. Refunds are the biggest scam.
I don't know if the biggest scam, but
they're a pretty big scam. It like affects everyone. It's like it's this thing where you're like, oh, I hope I get money back. And it's like,
you heard about all these things that these cats were excited to spend money on that they already had the money for.
They had the money for.
The IRS was just holding it.
The IRS just held it. And the thing too is like the reason why I think that it's such a big scam is because it obfuscates how much you're actually paying in taxes percentage wise, right? So like no one's paying attention to like this percentage of my income is going to taxes. All they care about is the refund. Right? Even if you actually paid less taxes one year, but you didn't get a refund, you're like, oh, my taxes are fucked up because I didn't get a refund, even though you actually paid less in taxes overall.
That's what I hated when I first started freelancing.
Yeah.
Is that you ended up paying taxes rather than getting some back, even if like I look back and I was actually like, wait, I paid less taxes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I made more money.
Yeah, exactly.
That kind of happened in that year after the Trump tax cuts were super controversial, where everyone like lost money. Is you technically did pay less taxes that year, but it's just the less tax, like the way they changed the withholding, it like messed it up so everyone owed. And then everyone was like, what is, and it's so super.
It's like, but you actually paid a lower percentage in taxes than you did the year before. The IRS just messed up the withholding. And so now everyone's like, I'm so mad. And even just the concept of a refund where you like overpay and then you get the money back. And that being like, something that we look forward to and that is celebrated.
Because you know what? You wouldn't do that with anybody else.
Nope.
Could you imagine if you let somebody hold a couple of stacks for like most of a year?
$2,000?
No, it's like, no, you better have my money. You better have my money on time. And that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
But we let the IRS just hold it. I mean,
we're excited about it.
Because again, we just talked about how the IRS is this scary death in taxes, inescapable kind of thing. So it's like, well, I can't mess with them. They'll give me back whatever they feel like they should give me back. It's all of this stuff together. It just makes it feel like we have so little agency.
Yeah, this is real. I feel like, oh man, the one last thing I'll add to this is I mentioned those Trump tax cuts, and I feel like a lot of folks don't realize that like the way those were designed was to like you pay less taxes in the beginning, and then like if Trump had a 4-year term, it would have been by the end you end up paying more taxes than ever before. And like tax code can be designed to take advantage of folks where you feel this immediate like gratification, and then later on you slowly have ramped up into paying more taxes than ever, and then you're kind of like, well, how did we even get here? Well, it was designed that way by the folks behind the scenes.
Right. And then as long as you get a refund, you're not even questioning how much in taxes you're paying, right? You're just like, oh, I got a refund, so I must be doing my taxes right. We must be paying less in taxes because I got a refund. When like, nope, that's not how it works. Maybe you just inched up your withholding every year. Maybe the IRS just inched up your withholding every year and didn't tell you and you didn't even notice, right? It's so, my God, I can go on for days about this, but yes.
Yes. I know.
But we only have 7 minutes left.
We're 6. So we're
6 minutes left.
Well, I think we're going to go into a little bit of overtime here. Let's continue to talk about these things. I think this is really important. If you are watching us on video on Spondulix, if there's something coming up after us, and there often is, there's a lot of great financial literacy content on Spondulix, the streaming channel put together by FPP, then you're going to get cut off before we get to the end of this. So go and check out the rest of the information on our podcast.
Yes, brunchandbudget.com/podcast to listen to the rest of this, because I want to ask a couple questions. Actually, Darren, I want to ask a little bit about you. We spent all this time like mining you for information, but I think you are such an interesting combination of things within this profession. You're a tax preparer, but you're also a financial coach. And I feel like that combination is really rare in a lot of ways. And I'm curious, what drew you to these two professions in particular, and how do they work together for you?
Yeah, so interesting question. What drew me to them is, so I was in school. I went to University of Georgia. There's a bulldog up there, a proud bulldog over here. And while I was there, I studied financial planning. And basically, I took a class. And in this intro to financial planning class, the professor said, you all have two options: write a 25-page paper or learn to do taxes. So I, of course, being the student who wanted to avoid all as much work as possible, I was like, yo, let me learn to do taxes. This won't be so bad. Little did I know that actually was going to probably be just as intensive. But essentially, they had a Vita site. So the first, I learned, I got certified to do taxes, learned to do it, went to the Vita site. My very, very first client was a teacher from Clark County and in Georgia. And, I had this cool experience of like doing taxes for her, but also kind of asking her questions to like kind of do it together. And I liked it, but was kind of like, I'll be great if I never do this again. But then I never actually stopped doing it. Like the next year I came back to volunteer. And then once I graduated, I volunteered in the community. So my first job had me doing taxes. And essentially like my first job was as a financial coach in Miami, which I was really, really grateful for, because they had a tax program and they wanted someone to like look after it and do some work with it and expand it a little bit. And I was like, I could be that guy. So I kind of took this classic training as a financial planner and, kind of began to work in low-income communities and really think about like comprehensive kind of coaching and planning for them and like what would help them the most. And oftentimes taxes was that thing. And then I think from that, I continued to get more and more experience and kind of grow my coach skills and learn more. And just kind of before I knew it was ingrained in both like the deep personal financial knowledge that comes from providing coaching to folks and the tax side of thinking about like once a year when you've got this big thing going on, how can you plan for it in every month? Can you change your withholding to get a little bit back more now? It just kind of became this whole synergy really between the two. And like, I feel like in my mind, this is my bias, but I think the best financial coaches and financial planners think about taxes and how they impact the rest of your financial situation. And that's the lens that I try to come at when I'm doing both services.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I feel like that taxes have so much to do with building and protecting someone's wealth that if you don't understand taxes as a financial planner, then it's hard to really go any deeper into financial planning or financial coaching, because that's something that we all have to deal with and affects us all so much, So yeah,
taxes is that special little extra thing in knowing your finances that if you don't have a lot, it can tear you down, and if you do have a lot, it can bring you to the next level.
Yeah, exactly. So I love that, just like the combination of the two. Also, because Dialect said it earlier in the show, taxes are so emotional, right? Like we all have feelings about our taxes, whether we're getting refunds or having to or not filing or whatever it is. We all have these fears around taxes. And if there's a way to just like assuage some of that a little bit, I feel like coaches are the way to do it. Yeah.
I also feel like I'll add on this point a little bit is I both do taxes and financial coaching, but I think my dream is a world where folks wouldn't need either one. Like in a world where folks don't need to prepare their taxes are prepared. And like in a lot of countries, they send you a form that says, here's what we think your taxes are going to look like. You kind of opt out and change it if you want. Like imagine a world where this country does that as well. IRS and states have most of your tax information already. And for the average Joe, they could do that. But as you guys know, there are these big corporations that incentivize and lobby for these preparation softwares and in-person preparation to be essential in this country. And I just feel like, man, imagine if there was a different way, and a world where folks are, have financial education available to them. Maybe it's taught in schools, like whatever it may be, where folks need to lean less on me as the financial coach to get information and can stand taller on their own. Like that just would be so great.
So like when it's time for your iTunes, I know it's not even called iTunes anymore, to get a YouTube album, that you got to opt out of.
Right.
But taxes, slightly more essential than Bono.
Yeah.
You have to opt into.
Yes. Oh my God.
The opt-in versus opt-out stuff. This should be we could do a whole show just talking about how people will manipulate opt-in, opt-out to make it harder for folks to be able to do what they
access.
want.
Yeah. I mean, that's so real. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that a huge part of we're big believers that our job shouldn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the system that makes it so that our job doesn't have to exist. And I feel like there's so many people holding on to the system because they've built their careers on it.
I mean,
right?
we could keep this job. We could keep this job where we just talked to Darren a little bit, and then we would have time to play more songs.
Yeah, there you go. That would be so pleasant.
There's actually a lot of good songs that came up. The ones that I didn't get to play today about income tax. Folks really be talking about this.
Yeah, no, again, because it's so emotional. Like people are making art about it because it elicits these emotions from people. And does it have to, right? And does it have to elicit these kinds of emotions and this kind of fear? And I think that's something that, oh my God, I don't even know where to go with that. I'm just like, yeah, I feel like that this tax conversation doesn't need to be so intense every time, but it is, because even just seeing all the changes with COVID and the stimulus and the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act a couple of years ago, it just continues to get more confusing, and it continues to get more confusing for the average person,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So yeah. So I guess just the question that I have that leads into that is, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen people make with their taxes?
Oh yeah, let's get over that.
Ooh, interesting question. I think going to the prepare as it disappears is probably one of the biggest ones. Just make sure that you're both that you have a way to contact the person, and that hopefully someone is vouching for them that or that they're a testimonial, something like that. Other big mistakes, I won't say that they're mistakes as much as I think sometimes clients come to me to get their taxes done, and they're like, oh, I didn't know that's how it worked, or I didn't know I was eligible to get this credit, or to have these expenses included, or that kind of thing. And they're like, man, I wish I've been doing this for the last, 2-3 years. And the short answer is you can actually go back and change your taxes. And a lot of folks don't know that you can do an amendment. A lot of folks are kind of like, how do I even change something? Or what if I change something once? Can I change it again? Yes, you can amend an amendment. It becomes a bit like Inception, where it's like a dream within a dream within a dream. But technically, you can change your taxes as many times as you like, or as many times as is necessary. But the goal is to always do it as best as you can in the first time. And if you happen to catch something that you missed out on that makes a big difference for you and those that are on your taxes, then to look at doing kind of that change and amendment.
So you don't have to do a whole big thing just to go in there again. You can say, hey, I made a mistake. Because one of the things I worry about is when you take your taxes to somebody and they prepare them, and then instead of, I know they're supposed to sign their name, saying that they're the ones who prepared it. And there's been a number of cases where people don't sign their name, they put your name. Yeah. So then you're on the hook for it. And whether before I even go through it, I'm like, well, now I'm thinking something shady or some mistake or something not good has happened. So what do I do then?
Right. Well, and I think too, this is where, again, it sucks that professionals even have to be involved, but this is where a professional can really step in and advise you on whether or not it makes sense to amend it. Mm-hmm. Right. And I will say that, before you go and decide to amend your return, I would definitely talk to a tax preparer or an accountant, right? And just get their opinion on whether or not you should do it. Is there
a statute of limitations for amending your return?
Yeah, so there isn't a statute of limitations around amending. You can always amend a return regardless of how old it is, but there is a statute of limitations on how long you can get a refund from an amendment.
Okay.
And that tends to be 3 years, essentially just about 3 years. So we're in 2021 now. You basically can go back as far back as 2017 through April 14th of this year. Mm-hmm. Once April 14th comes, you'll miss out on any chance to get that refund in period. It's kind of gone.
So if you do have back taxes and you're supposed to get a refund, just don't wait that long.
Yeah, especially if in this year, if it's 2017, if your tax preparer is booked up through the 14th or 15th of April, like make sure you get in there and talk to them before the 15th, because otherwise that window will close and you'll miss it.
Well, and if you're several years past, like we were talking before about like, oh, I didn't want to do this, and it's been more than 3 years, it's fine. Still amend those taxes is important, but you're not going to get that refund.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, got it. Okay. Woo. Oh my gosh. Okay. And then I guess the final question that I have is there anything in particular that freelancers of color need to watch out for with their taxes?
That's a good question. I feel like, so the thing that I always tell folks is, so typically what I do is, at once a month, I'm a freelancer as well. So I freelance and I, work for a bunch of different places. So I pulled together my taxes this year. And the thing that I always try to do is I use the taxes as an opportunity to go back and look at both my expenses for every month that related to business expenses and personal expenses too, to see if there's something that I missed out on. So once a month I go and kind of have my little calculus. I put my stuff in my spreadsheet. Good to go. And then at the end of the year, when I'm doing my taxes, I'll go back and look at everything once again and just kind of see. And I feel like it isn't, sometimes I discover new things that I can deduct, which is great. But sometimes it's just the personal finance information I gain out of it. So in the pandemic, I had my spreadsheet for all the places that I spent money at. And I saw the restaurant I went to most was actually the brewery that's down the street from my house. Because people would come and say, let's hang out. I'd say, we can only hang out in the park because of the pandemic. We would then get a set of brews, go to the park, and watch the sunset over Manhattan views, and it was great. So all that to say, use taxes as an opportunity to look back and reflect on what you did the past year, to think about what you want to do differently or what you want to be intentional about in this upcoming year. That's probably my biggest advice to freelancers of color is that, and don't be afraid to just have conversations about it, to ask your friends, your family, folks in your community who are also freelancing, what they're doing, what they have discovered. I feel like this kind of pool of knowledge that we all have isn't often taken advantage of and really maximized. So if we can begin to have some of these conversations and really spread the knowledge that we're getting around taxes, I think that it can become a bit less mysterious and more easily understandable by all of us. So.
I love it.
I also love the accidental bars there. You heard what he was talking about, paying your taxes and meet up with your crew, get some brews, and watch the sunset with the Manhattan view.
Oh, Darren.
I heard that.
Dropping the rhymes.
I heard it.
I love it. Oh my gosh. This was so helpful and so informative. And I also feel like just your approach to it takes a lot of the fear around it. There's so much practical stuff that you had us walk away with in this, and things where I can tell that you prepare people's taxes, right? Just the way you talk about it, you're I'm in the weeds with people. So we really, really, really thank you for sharing a lot of your knowledge with us, for joining us on the show, for being a sea change coach, and just being a part of our stuff.
Thank you for having me on. It was an honor to be here. You guys are a delight, and it's just always good to talk taxes with folks that enjoy the nerdiness that's involved with it. So thanks.
You love it.
Thank you for breaking it down, making it make more sense, making it more simple. I'm going to share one more song. We're going out to Philadelphia for this last one. And before we were talking about the income taxes and morals, and we were talking about the income tax party. And this time we're talking about income tax money. And this is a cautionary tale. This is in line with all the other stuff that we've been saying about how people look at this income tax as this big gift that comes from above. This is a cautionary tale where he talks about what people could do with their income tax money that's not a good thing.
Oh.
Yeah. It's wild. So, by the way, again, as usual, hate us, rate us, debate us, get us on all the places that you can check us out. And also, we should mention, before we go here, I'm going to pull us back on the screen. We also should mention that we're part of a hip-hop financial literacy concert that's going to be going down on Spondulix on April 8th, oh, you're putting together a little banner there.
I'm just going to put
on April 8th, you go to hiphopfinfest.com. You make a rap song if you are between the ages of 14 and 18 about personal finance. We have lessons on how to make a song, lessons on how to talk about finance and how to talk about the racial wealth divide and all these good things. Make a song. Maybe you'll win. If you win, you get to be on an album and get to perform at FVP's annual conference and get a free trip to Disney World.
Yeah.
So check that out. And again, here's a rap song about money to give you some inspiration about doing that. This is the P3 Entertainment Group, Scrap Easy, talking about income tax money. We'll check you next time. Brunch Budget. Peace.
Yeah. Y'all know that income tax money like a hood stimulus. Niggas be using that shit for shit you're not supposed to use it for.
Hood stimulus.
Real rap, man. Listen to this. Income tax, or the stimulus. They ain't working for the benefit, they working for the check that coming every April. Nigga want to fuck around with Jane, he wasn't able. So we got a job washing dishes, washing tables. And it wasn't much, but he was on the payroll. Then he filed taxes with his all us, flooded out him extra. 6 tags, that's enough for him to mess with. Well, 9 holes off his man, and we rolling. So 2 holes to his man, cause he owed him. Paper still folding. Looking back next week, say he wanted another 2. Shit is getting crazy. Met with his homie got set up. Turns out last week homie got picked up. Put him in the 10 cause he couldn't take a hiccup. And the income tax money really fucked this shit up. He try to grind with that income tax money. Fuck around and bought a 9 with his income tax money. His baby mom got her income tax money. Shit, he always trying to shine with that income tax money. She got a job for that income tax money. Even bought them Louboutins with her income tax money. Her baby crying for that income tax money, but she always trying to shine with that income tax money. Shorty tripping, I mean shorty a trip. Go to the hoop for a new bag, shorty a flip. Real shit, she start working though. Off the job, answering phone, she getting dope. Her son's sick, man, he needs some type treatment. In the past, she was tweaking, but she trying to live decent. And the income tax money supposed to come in this weekend. She was all said her son gon' make it. She ain't gotta get naked, she just hope nobody take it. She walking, phone steady talking. See this bad bitch in that bag all alone. She thinking, damn, youngin' really shitting on her. Youngin' putting on, get her out, okay. Thinking, damn, I'ma show her. Every bitch in the store still fucking know her. Never happened next minute, not even funny. She got the Chanel bag in the Louboutins with her tax money. He try to grind with that income tax money. Fuck around and bought a 9 with his income tax money. His baby mom got her income tax money. Shit, he always trying to shine with that income tax money. She got a job for that income tax money. Even bought them Louboutins with her income tax money. Her baby crying for that income tax money, but she always trying to shine with that.